Anyway, so we're going to start the second part of the day, and I have here with me Richard, founder of Quantstamp. The purpose of the Fireside chat, which are actually going to be happening now, is we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, specifically about building teams. I think a lot of us here are, in the process or already have done it. Building your own tech company on the blockchain space. Some of you are in the startup space, and I think the question here we all have is culture versus talent. Like how important it is. How do you build a company up? Like all the way from say, a concept to a white paper, ICO, and all the way. And well, I think that's why we have Richard here. So maybe just starting off, Richard, tell us a little bit more about Quantstamp.
Yeah, really appreciate you all coming today. So Quantstamp, we build software that automatically secures smart contracts. And we actually built a test network to allow people to decentralize this process. And we also built a web product that allows anyone in the world to do a security audit. So Quantstamp, we're a Y Combinator-backed company. We're one of the very first blockchain companies to enter Y Combinator. We started last year in June, me and my co-founder. And we scaled from 2 people in June to 30 people today.
Right. And that 30 people are all based where right now?
So we have offices in San Francisco and Toronto, Canada. And we have about 20 employees in San Francisco and 10 engineers in Toronto.
All right. So maybe just to start things off a little bit. So Quantstamp was something that you created, kind of like your concept of sorts. Sure. And how did that whole co-founding thing happen? Like, were you guys friends, or how did everything start?
Yeah. So obviously, I think the topic of this is like how to hire a great team and find talent. And I think one of the most important things when you start is to find the right co-founder, right? So the process for me to find my co-founder was Steven Stewart. He had a degree in software verification. And I actually tried to hire him about 4 years ago for my algorithmic trading company. At the time, he had his own startup, but it was a way we got to learn to know each other. And when he finished that startup, I tried to hire him again for my next company, which was doing algorithmic trading for cryptocurrencies. At the time, he was pretty burnt out from his startup. So about a year after that, I finally convinced him to move to Vancouver and work on Quantstamp. And kind of the things I looked for was, he was a self-starter, and he had a track record of building other companies and managing people, and that was very helpful.
So let's talk about like, so you first met him 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And what was so? I mean, what did you see essentially in Steven? Like from a matchmaking perspective, it's like seeing that girl 5 years ago and you bump into her again, and like she's still the one,
Yeah. Well, so I actually knew about him from our mutual friend, who's the head of user security at Coinbase now. I knew him by reputation because he was the one guy who would never leave his room and always working on his startup. So for about a year, he didn't actually see all the sites in San Francisco until he finished his startup. So I respected that determination.
Right. So basically, it started out with just the two of you for like how long? It was like all the way to pre-ICO.
Yeah. So for us, we focused on developing our prototype first of all. So in July, this was right after the first Parity wallet hack. We built an automated tool to find that vulnerability. And once we did that, we had the proof of concept, and we started working with 2 professors at the University of Waterloo to validate the idea. And once we kind of had them review the concept and improve it, then we started writing out the white paper and building the first prototype for the testnet as well. And so the whole process took from July until around October before we actually started bringing on employees.
Right. And the first employees you brought on were engineers.
Actually, no. So I have a philosophy about hiring, which is always try to get people that will work for free when you start, because they probably believe in the idea. And so the very first people we got was Krishna, who's sitting in the front row. He was involved in running the Ethereum meetup in Vancouver. And he just started helping us with, writing out a white paper, getting people to help improve it.
Is he still working for free though?
No, not anymore.
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So and then we also, through our network at the University of Waterloo, there were a lot of engineers who did their PhD in software verification, and they spent their careers building like a food delivery app or like a HR app. So they really wanted to apply their expertise and do something that they already spent 5 years on. So it's very easy to find like the first 4 PhD employees that way as well.
So you basically had like 4 of your first hires essentially were helping you to build the product, and they were essentially working for free.
Yeah, I think we were all kind of working for free, but it really helped to align the initial culture because it's an idea that everyone really believed in, right? And then obviously after that we started not working for free, but still to this day I kind of ascribe to that hiring philosophy because I think you find the people who kind of go all in, right?
So let's talk about that philosophy a little bit more. So that it works very well for small organizations because you work with them very closely on a day-to-day basis, hour-by-hour basis. You can see their passion, you can see their likes, their dislikes, their personalities. They get into the deep end, they grunt it out with you. What happens, when you start scaling things up to about 10? I mean, roughly when did you start to really ramp things up from a team perspective?
Yeah, so when we started, I think there's like 3 stages in our development. The first stage was leading up to the token sale, and then the second stage was from the token sale until when we started YC, Y Combinator, and then the third stage was really like scaling our team to deliver our project for demo day, which was 2 weeks ago. And in this first section, from when we're scaling from two people to 10 people, that's actually pretty easy to do because when you go from 2 to 10, you know everyone really well. And they're kind of the closest people to the founders. So they almost act exactly in any situation like the founders, right? Because they kind of spend all day with you. And another really great part of this first, from scaling from 2 to 10 was, doing a token sale. It's actually kind of like doing an IPO. So it's a high pressure situation, and you really get to know people very well. So it's actually the perfect team building exercise.
So that first 2 to 10 people leading up to the token sale, are all these people still within Quantstamp right now?
Yeah. So all except one are still within Quantstamp. Yeah.
What happened to that one?
So too much pressure. So yeah.
So basically, I mean, it's just natural evolution where essentially and people drop off and everything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went from 2 to 10, and after that you did the token sale, quite successful. And I mean, just for the record, how much did you guys raise, just for everybody's benefit?
We raised a little bit over $30 million.
Uh-huh.
When Ether was around 300.
Okay. Those were the days. So after the token sale, you guys essentially started hiring more. I mean, I'm assuming that then you have to look at different verticals of hire, different structures, and everything. Like, was there a point of time where you actually realized that okay, we need to hire like people for certain particular skill sets, or was it really where you look for people that start to like have multiple skill sets that overlap each other?
Yeah. So I think blockchain companies are multidisciplinary, right? I was quite fortunate before I started this company. I was the head of trading at Tower Research, and algorithmic trading is also very multidisciplinary. So you had like the hardware guys, you had like the more business-focused trader guys, and then you had like the PhDs. So with even when we just hired the first 10 employees, we had business development and the protocol research people, and also a web team, because a lot of initial work is actually just traditional JavaScript, like web development. So when we considered the type of people we wanted to hire, we looked for people that had cross-disciplinary skills, but were deep in one of those three. So if like we hired business developers, they also had to have an understanding of engineering and blockchain. If we hired a protocol developer, they had to have an idea of how crypto economics work.
Right. And how would you say because it's like still about that scale of when you were like 10 people and everything like that. It's a bit vague to ask you what the culture was like, but how was it like during those months? Like when everybody's working, the organization, I'm assuming, is still rather flat in a way
Yeah.
as well. But how is it like working? And given where Quantstamp is right now, just as a convenient comparison example, is like, are things really that much different now?
Yeah, so there's a really good author I like to read called Joe on Software. They've been publishing an article about growing tech companies for many years. And after you go from around to 30 employees, you actually have to add a middle management layer, because at that time, it's not possible for the kind of like the founders to have full visibility into everything. When we had 10 people, so we're kind of the prototypical Silicon Valley startup. We actually started in a hacker house. So it was just a house in the marina. And people would sleep there. They would wake up and just work at starting 6 a.m. We'd work until 2 a.m. We had a loft, and we'd have up to 10 people in the loft. So in those early days, it's very much, it's kind of like a SWAT team, just doing everything together. I think for a period of 2 months, we didn't leave the block that we were on around the house.
You
So
basically
everyone's-
shut yourself out from the outside world.
Yeah, there was. I mean, like leading up to the token sale, we basically didn't leave the block. So because our whole community is worldwide, and most of the things that we're doing is through the internet, through social media. So yeah.
So let's go a little bit more into that middle management
Yeah.
part right now, because it's kind of like going through the steps of the evolution of Quantstamp as well. So like when you realize that you needed, and look, middle management is also a very, very important layer that's needed in any company that's scaling. I think you don't need to read that in any management book. It's kind of like how businesses have gone. But how do you actually find this middle management people? And they kind of have to adhere to whatever you say, but at the same time, they also have to manage the expectations of the people below them. Not to mention as well, to carry on to that question as well, is that there are also people that maybe have come on board at a very early stage, now don't report to you, for example. They have to report to somebody else, and they'll be like, hey, I'm here since day one. Why is it that I'm not working with Richard anymore? Like, what's going on, guys? Like,
Yeah.
do you have that kind of like issues, and how was it like,
Yeah, so adding middle management is actually very tricky. For us, as we grew, so we tried to hit the YC Demo Day goal about 90 days before, and we had to plan for it. And based on our plan, we had to add about 8 web engineers, another 4 protocol engineers, a bunch of operations people. So it was no longer feasible for us to do all the management. And there's also a culture shift that happens between around 10 people to 30 people. Because the original 10 people we hire, we specifically look for almost like rebels and misfits in society that they're just used to almost directing themselves, right? So you basically have this group of people who are completely self-driven. There's not really a lot of structure, and they just look for gaps to fill. At about 15 people, it doesn't work that well anymore because when you have a lot of people who are all looking for gaps to fill, the company doesn't move as fast. So what we did was we found the largest group of people. So at the time, it was the whole engineering team, which was about 10 people at the time. And we looked for someone who had experience scaling from 2 people to 30 people to 100 people. And what we found was our VP of engineering, he was the first engineer at Twitter. And he scaled Twitter. He hired Jack Dorsey. He worked with Evan Williams. And then after that, he started another company, and he sold that company to Digital Garage. So we looked for him for 2 reasons. One is the maturity that comes with knowing, okay, here's how a startup is supposed to look like when you have 10 people, and here is what it's supposed to look like when you have 30. And these are the processes that you have to have in place when you have 30. So that was one thing. And another thing was his network. Because previously when I hired for algorithmic trading, I looked through hundreds of resumes to try to find the right people to hire, really like high quality developers. And this process of trying to hire through viewing resumes, it has a very medium to low success rate, because a lot of people who look good on paper don't necessarily work well, in person.
True.
Yeah. So when we looked for our VP of engineering, one reason we found him was he had a very good network of people who liked to work with him, and so when he just sent an email or picked up the phone, they would come and join Quantstamp. So through that, we got about 8 extra engineers who are literally the best people he worked with in his career to join us within like 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks.
More on the hiring side, now that you mentioned him, how did you convince him? Like, I mean, look, you just mentioned VP of engineer, first engineer at Twitter, etc., etc. He could walk into almost any job, I'm assuming, right? Like, what makes, why would he choose Quantstamp? It's like, I mean, it's also like, was it a cultural thing? Was it talent? Was it money? It's like.
Yeah, I think people at that level, especially, they have so many choices. He could just retire. He doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So I think really why he joined was he believed that what we were doing has a big impact. And also that when he joined, he realized we had a lot of potential that we could fulfill, and by him joining, he could help us fulfill that potential. Because I think for really senior people, the one thing they really crave is to have an impact and to see what they do matters. And for me and Steven, our philosophy was always to find people who are better than ourselves and give them the agency and the power to be their best selves, right? And our philosophy is that people are always waiting for a chance to go all in. And there's very few chances in life where they can really do that. And they're always kind of waiting for the right chance. So for us, it was about giving them this chance to just go all in and make sure that they were taken care of along the way. So that allowed us to find good people like Evan, and also many of our engineers who, I'm pretty young, but We have engineers that are like 40 and they had like 20 years of coding in the Silicon Valley. So
And moving on, so the next step is after token sale and everything, you guys decided on Y Combinator.
yeah.
Why? I mean, like you raised the money already. Why go through Y Combinator? You were building a team. You had the VP. Like, why still go through? I mean, what were you hoping to get out of Y Combinator?
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges that come with trying to scale a company to be like $1 billion company that has a lot of impact, right? Airbnb started out as two guys who were selling,
Couch
air
space. Yeah.
mattresses or couch space, and to go from there to really like a disruptor of the hotel industry, that's a difficult journey with a lot of ups and downs. So my feeling was always to get a lot of people to go all in on Quantstamp, and we felt that YC could help us in that process. There's a lot of pitfalls that come with trying to scale a company quickly and also delivering something that people actually want. And since they've literally helped like thousands of startups through this process, we thought that was very valuable. And indeed, it turned out that it was extremely valuable. Just the fact that we had this deadline actually allowed us to hit the deadline, because every day we'd come to work and on the whiteboard you see the number of days until demo day counting down every single day. And it really focused the team on this one mission, which is to deliver the product. And it allowed us to be like, one of the few blockchain companies that delivered our product way ahead of schedule. So I think just that was worth it for the.
And would you say that the Y Combinator journey, did you guys evolve? Like, I mean, was there any change in the attitude of the company? I mean, like, if I can say so, did even anybody in the business even like disagree? Like, look, going through YCom is a waste of time, or something like that. And it is, right? Accelerators isn't for everybody. But was there a shift in the way you guys did things, processes? Did you find any changes in the way people believed, the way people worked within Quantstamp?
Yeah, I think both internally and externally, right? Internally, the main thing it helped with was we could literally meet all these CEOs of billion-dollar companies and schedule a half-hour chat with them. And when you run a company, there are a lot of very tricky issues that you can't really discuss with employees because it's kind of tricky to discuss those things. And you also can't discuss with the wider world. But that experienced founders are very good at, have been through it. So, we talk with the CEO of Pebble, and they like shipped their smartwatch before the iWatch came out, and like the CEO of Airbnb and Dropbox. So I think just those consultations is extremely worth it. They also helped us with our hiring strategy by determining, at the time I was thinking of not hiring another 10 people during the process, because it's actually very disruptive to try to produce product. But I think I was convinced after talking with quite a few people that this was the right thing to do, and that we were actually trying to go to delivering for the end of 2018 while we're in this process. So scaling during that was going to be helpful.
All right.
Yeah.
And what would be the key, like, so it's been June, actually it's not that long, actually it's less than a year. Like, what would be your like personal key takeaways, like, being a leader? I mean, I personally believe culture comes from the top, right? It's something that essentially, like kind of like osmosis, it breathes down into the whole entire organization as well. Like, what would be like your 3 learning points, from culture versus talent perspective? Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's to rephrase the question, right? If you see somebody that's extremely talented, even though you may think that person does not fit in, like even in Quantstamp in the present situation, like what would you do?
Yeah. So Quantstamp is a collection of misfits, right, in society, because we try to hire the very best people, and there's always a reason why they don't work for Google or Facebook, right? So for us, having a great culture was extremely important because we have like anarchists on our team. We have like 5 anarchists. We have a bunch of like really kind of like almost like communists on our team, and we also have these researcher types and we have these business types. So for me, like to empower the individual people and to have them feel that they're valued was, I think it was the key to scaling successfully.
But what's like the key trait? I mean, you've mentioned the word misfit quite a few times, but if you could really point it down, what was the key trait that you were actually looking for underneath all of that?
Yeah, I think the key trait is it's independence of thinking, right? Because for this type of company, you don't just work like from 9 to 5. You kind of want to just kind of always thinking about it. So that's one thing I was looking for. People who are going to fully commit to the project. And once I found those people, it was about showing, both me and my co-founder, showing that like this is a place where you're going to be for a long time, and this is a rapidly growing company where you're going to have a lot of impact. So I think people who are attracted to those traits, they naturally gravitate towards our company. And by the end, we could kind of pick and choose who we thought were the really best people. And to this day, almost all of them are still here. So
That's great. I think we're almost out of time. I think we'll probably want to take a couple of questions after this. But kind of like, just to wrap things up, or at least from between the both of us, like from a letter to a younger self kind of thing, what would be like, like from a hiring process, what would be like your 3 key takeaways basically for the audience as well?
Oh, sure. I think one key to our success was getting all these PhDs who had many years of experience to join. And actually, I think in terms of hiring, the most important thing is it comes down to being humble and finding the best qualities in the people and making sure they're valued. When it's like the topic is, culture versus talent.
Yeah.
And my feeling is, a talented person will thrive in the right culture, and the role of the founders is to create that, the culture.
The culture,
Yeah.
essentially. All right. Okay. I think we have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. If anybody has got any more questions, anybody's got any questions for Richard? We'll do the gentleman at the front first. And then after that, there's a gentleman on the 4th row over there as well. Yep.
You mentioned briefly about the token sale. Could you tell us just a few words about how you undertook that effort to do the token sale?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer, so I viewed it as an engineering project. If you wanted to raise X, you needed to get Y people to be interested, and then X% would convert. So that's how I viewed the problem of doing a token sale. And once we started, actually about 10 days after we started, we were already had more demand than what we wanted to meet. So we had to basically try to figure out who we wanted to let into the token sale. And we invented kind of a application process for that. So yeah, that was basically how we did the process. Yeah. yeah, I think this application process called proof of carrying was like one of the first of its kind. Yeah.
All right. Next gentleman in the back.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Can you share with us that how your team felt when the token price went up and dropped down, and how, as a leader, that you can, hold on your vision and stabilize the team, or the token prices in that?
Yeah, so I had a long career in trading. I started during the financial crisis, where literally like I would watch, would like make and lose millions of dollars every day. And over time, I realized that the best thing you can do is to focus on your core mission. So I think for our team, we did a couple of things. One is we had a really long vesting period of 3 years. It's probably almost the longest in the industry. So people were naturally focused more on the long term. And the second thing we did was we had a concrete goal that we had to hit in the 90 days. So I think once people were fixated on the goal, which is about delivering product, they weren't thinking about a lot of other things during that time. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay, we'll just take one more, and then we'll wrap it up.
In the cryptocurrency space, what are the other companies that you really admire and like?
I like there's a couple. So I like a company called TrueBit. What they're trying to do is build a interchain bridge for off-chain verification. I think that's one of the most important problems that we face, because so much data and computation is off-chain. And they also have a lot of integrity. So another company that I really like is called Zilliqa. They're building a next generation blockchain, but it's already working on the testnet. And we're actually helping them to build their smart contract language, which is a safer version of Solidity. What else? I also like Omise Go. So we've been working with Omise Go to help implement their Plasma implementation. I think that's going to be one of the keys to having mainstream people use blockchain technology. A lot of the applications are still very nascent, so we're excited about enabling remittances, and also I like this project called MakerDAO. They were actually able to produce a stable token for the last 9 months, and that's going to be really key to get regular people to use cryptocurrency. So,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard?
And we're actually we're contributing to the Ethereum Community Fund to support even more of these projects. So,
Okay. All right. Everybody, round of applause for Richard. Thank you very much, man.
well, thank you.
See you then.